More radiant than the sun, purer than the snow, subtler than the ether is the self, the spirit within my heart. I am that self am I.
Thank you for that. Very nice.
Thank you. Yes, just one more little thing you can add to your tapas routine if it appeals to you. Welcome to session number 29. When we posted our session number 25 on YouTube, we got a question from a viewer, Amal Youngblood, asked a question pertaining to our suggestion that one thing we can do as part of our spiritual practice is to go out in nature, take a walk, observe things without labeling, without naming, without judging. And this is her question. She said, when observing nature and not labeling anything, I find it hard to perceive anything, any energy, other than peace. What is supposed to happen? And what came to mind was a story that Eckhart Tolle shared with us. And I'm going to have Paul share that story with us.
So it's from his book, A New Earth. And he describes two monks that are in nature. And one is the teacher, and one is the student. And the student says, Master, for years I've been wanting to know your secret. I want to know how to find peace. I'm waiting for you to tell me the key. After all these years, what is it? And then the master lifts his finger and says, do you hear that mountain stream in the distance? Enter peace from there. And then that's the end of the story.
So the student was so focused on himself that when his teacher said, do you hear the mountain stream? He hadn't heard it. He had to wait and be in silence for a period of time. And then he heard it. He says, yes, I do hear it. And the teacher said, and start from there. Enter peace from there.
And that answer that the teacher gave applies to you if you hear it or if you don't hear it.
Yes, exactly.
And many of us wouldn't hear it. Maybe there wasn't even a stream at all. But the key is to silence yourself and then silence your mind, and then you're aware of so much more. And that's where peace is.
Yeah. It's a practice. That means at first you may not get much at all, but persevere. Keep doing it because it works. Thousands of monks, thousands of pupils have got results from it. So don't give up. Keep trying. Mm-hmm. That's the message. All right, we're on letter number 49, a very interesting letter. They all are interesting, but this is particularly, and you'll see why as we go along.
Letter number 49. And we're hearing from KH now?
Yes.
Okay. Good friend, I know, of course, I would, if I were authorized to influence you in any particular direction, answer most gladly with that knowledge thou shalt share with me someday.
Now, he keeps putting things in quotes, so this is obviously in reply to a letter from Sinnett, and whenever he's answering one of his statements or questions, he puts that in quotes.
When or how is not for me to say, nor for me to know, as you and you alone have to weave your destiny. Perhaps soon and perhaps never. But why feel despairing or even doubting? Believe me, we may yet walk along the arduous path together. We may yet meet, but if we do, it has to be along and on those adamantine rocks with which our occult rules surround us. Never outside them, however bitterly we may complain.
Now, adamantine rocks is apparently something that Sinnett had written. He said, I feel like I'm separated from you by adamantine rocks. Adamantine meaning diamond-like, hard, impenetrable. And so K.H. is going to use this as a simile. Remember, he usually uses a mountaintop and a valley as his simile, but he's going to use something a little bit different this time.
No, never can we pursue our further journey if it is along that crowded highway which encircles them, and on which spiritualists and mystics, prophets and seers elbow each other nowadays.
So he's saying, we are far above the madding crowd, and you are still in the midst of them. And he's referring to all of these mystical people who are trying to claim that they have the truth, that they are the ones who see clearly.
Yea, verily, the motley crowd of candidates may shout open sesame for an eternity to come.
Do you know where that comes from? Open sesame?
No, I guess I would have thought it was from Sesame Street or something.
No, much older than that.
Oh, my
No,
goodness.
this is from Arabian tales that were written down by someone in French, I think around 1700, something like that. And one of them was Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. And in order to gain entry to this cave where all the treasure was, you had to say the secret word, and it was open sesame.
Like sesame seed?
Yeah, apparently a sesame seed, when it is fully ripe, splits open all of a sudden, like boom, like that. So for apparently that reason, they used that as their secret word.
That's really funny. My gosh. It never will so long as they remain outside those rules. Doubt not, my friend, it is but from the very top of those adamantine rocks of ours, not at their foot, that one is ever enabled to perceive the whole truth. By embracing the whole limitless horizon, and though they may seem to you to be standing in your way, it is simply because you have hitherto failed to discover, or even so much as suspect, the reason and the operation of those laws. Hence, they appear so cold and merciless and selfish in your sight, although you yourself have intuitionally recognized in them the outcome of ages of wisdom. Nevertheless, were one but to obediently follow them, they could be made to gradually yield to one's desire and give to him all he asks of them. But no one could ever violently break them without becoming the first victim of his violence, yea, to the extent of risking the loss of his own hard-won share of immortality, both here and there.
Now, Sinnett is kind of obsessing about these warnings that he's been getting that this conversation, this communication could break at any time. Anytime the Mahat Chohan says, okay, we gave it a try and it's not working, so we're done. So he's really worried about that. And KH is trying to tell him that worrying is not going to make it better.
Remember, too anxious expectation is not only tedious but dangerous too. Each warmer and quicker throb of the heart wears so much of life away. Wow, that's
This is
profound.
This is very profound. This is one of the main things in all of the Mahatma letters that we need to pay attention to.
That coincides perfectly with what the teachings of physical yoga say about breathing slowly and deeply. Mm-hmm. You prolong your life when you breathe slow and deep, and he says here that each quicker and warmer throb of the heart wears life away.
And
So
that's what we've taught for so many years
Yes.
that it doesn't matter whether it's a bad emotion or a good emotion,
Right.
it still drains your energy. It zaps your energy. And that means you have less energy to apply in a more useful way.
That's really interesting. Wow. The passions, the affections, are not to be indulged in by him who seeks to know, for they, quote, wear out the earthly body with their own secret power, and he who would gain at his aim must be cold.
Now, that sounds a little cold, doesn't it? And yet, they never lose their love for humanity, but they do have to remove themselves, extract themselves from the hubbub and the emotional drama that we surround ourselves with all the time. They cannot operate in that kind of an environment.
He must not even desire too earnestly or too passionately the object he would reach, else the very wish will prevent the possibility of its fulfillment, or at best retard and hold him back. Wow.
All right. Yeah, why don't you repeat that sentence?
He must not even desire too earnestly or too passionately the object he would reach, else the very wish will prevent the possibility of its fulfillment, or at best retard and hold him back.
So what do we say in our book?
We say lots of things about this, and so do the Yoga Sutras.
Yes, what the way we say it is that which you seek desperately, you will lose. That which you release, you will have in abundance.
It sounds like a conundrum, but it actually is true.
And this is very true. This is an occult truth, is that if you want something too earnestly and with too much passion, it's not going to work. And this is absolutely true. You have to work as those who are desperately wanting something and yet not want it desperately, with the assurance that it will come
It's a
in due
knowingness.
course when everything else is in place.
The way to do this practically, because it might seem confusing, like that doesn't make any sense. Study the 8 limbs of Ashtanga Yoga. It's all spelled out there. Patanjali is so brilliant with this. One of his most profound statements in the Yoga Sutras is Abhyasa Vairagya Tan Nirodha. And what that means is, with practice and non-attachment, you'll achieve the calm mind and the elevated consciousness. With practice every day, your work, do your work as if, like Terry says, as if you were reaching for that goal, but Vairagya, don't be attached to the goal. Then you'll achieve the calm mind. That one sentence is exactly what we're saying here. And then you might be saying, well, why would I work so hard and not want the outcome? Well, some of the other 8 limbs that you'll study if you know Ashtanga Yoga: contentment, santosha, calmness, equanimity. Do all those things while you work towards the goal with the knowingness that the goal will be yours, but don't be fixated on the goal.
With all that said, when it does start to work, don't get excited, because as we learned, that will shut it down. So even when it does start to work, stay calm, stay cool, and just smile and watch it work.
It's really, really profound how important this is. No matter what happens, if it's going well or if it's going not well, stay calm and carry on. Like the Queen says, keep calm and carry on. All right, moving along here. You will find in the forthcoming number of the Theosophist, the magazine, 2 articles which you must read. No need to tell you why, as I leave it to your intuition. As usual, there is an indiscretion which I have allowed to remain, as there are few, if any, who will understand the hint contained in it, except for you.
So one of these articles is very, very long. In fact, they had to split it up into 2 sections, one in March, I think, of 1882, and one in April, the editions of those 2 months. When you print it out, it ends up being 13 pages in a Word document. So an enormous amount of verbiage. But it actually has some really, really good hints in it. And that's what he's telling him. Look at it carefully.
There is more than one such hint, though. Hence, I call your attention to the Elixir of Life and William Oxley's Philosophy of Spirit.
So, two different articles.
The former contains hazy references and explanations in the vein of those of which you complain in your letter to my brother. This time you are warned, good friend, so complain no more.
So, if you read it carefully, your answers will be there, but you have to find them.
The second article is penned by the Manchester seer, Oxley.
Now, this is another spiritualist in England, and he's a mystic and a medium.
Having received no reply to his summons to KH, he criticizes, mildly so far, the utterances of that, quote, internal power, for which new title I feel rather obliged to him.
He wrote a letter addressed to KH, and I don't know if he asked Senate to get it to him, somebody. KH received the letter one way or another, and this was months before, more than 6 months prior. And KH chose not to respond to it. So Oxley was a little bit peeved at that and referred to him as, what was it? That internal power. He says, well, I kind of like that. I'll take that sobriquet.
At the sight of the gentle rebuke, our blunderbuss editor didn't fail to explode.
That's HPB.
Nor would she be soothed until Joel Kuhl, with whom the famous review was concocted, one, by the way, which, seen by you, ought never have been permitted to see the light of day, was authorized under the safe pen name of Reviewer to answer the seer by correcting some of his blunders in a few innocent footnotes.
Now, he wrote a book, actually, and it was a little bit unusual because he recognized that there were some real truths that came out of India in the form of their scriptures, especially the Bhagavad Gita and the Mahabharata. And he recognized that, but that he went further and put a spiritualist twist on it that involved spirits being involved. And that's completely opposite to any Indian philosophy. So when the review was written, and it seemed to have been an effort between KH and Joel Kuhl, Oxley didn't like their suggestions that there were some mistakes in it.
Yet I must say that all of the present English prophets, William Oxley is the only one who has an inkling of truth, hence the only one calculated to effectively help our movement.
So they're hoping, yet again, that with a little bit of correction, that they can find one of these mediums that they can train. And here, again, is a potential candidate.
He seems to have but very hazy notions about what he calls the, quote, astro-Masonic basis of Bhagavad Gita and the Mahabharata. Yet he is positively and absolutely the only one whose general comprehension of spirit and its capabilities and functions after the first separation we call death are, on the whole, if not quite correct, at least approximating very nearly the truth. Read it when it comes out. Poor, poor humanity. When shalt thou have the whole and unadulterated truth? Behold, each of the privileged ones saying, I alone am right.
So now he's going to contrast some of these seers and mystics who at least partially perceive the truth against others like Stanton Moses who say, I alone have the truth. I'm the only one who has access to some spirit guide who knows what's actually happening.
Why is it that every one of those, quote, seers believes himself the alpha and the omega of truth? Well, we still have that today, though.
Of course we do.
We still have the people who say this is the
right.
This is the voice of
this is
my
it.
trail.
Yeah, my spirit guide, the whatever entity I'm channeling is the only one that has the truth.
My goodness. Thus, SM, that would be Staten Moses, right, is taught that there are no such beings as brothers, and to reject the doctrine of frequent annihilation and that of the elementary and of the non-human spirits. Maitland and Mrs. Kingsford have revealed to them, by Jesus and God themselves, that alone would beat Imperador. That alone would beat Imperador.
Yeah, she's got a higher entity on her side.
God. That many of the supposed spirits which control mediums and converse with spiritualists are no disembodied spirits at all, but only flames, and the remains of dogs, cats, and pigs are helped to communicate with mortals by the spirit of trees, vegetables, and minerals.
So even though he's kind of making fun of what she says, he's saying that there is some truth in it. She's actually perceiving some bits of truth if we could just get her to be willing to be trained a little more carefully.
Those teachings are nearer to the mark than anything uttered so far by the mediums, and I will tell you why. When the seeress, so that'd be Mrs. Kingsford, right?
Yes.
Is made to reveal that, quote, immortality is by no means a matter of course for all. That, quote, souls shrink away and expire.
Now he's picking out some of the truths that she has picked up on.
It being the nature of them to burn out and expand themselves, etc., she is delivering actual, incontrovertible facts. And why? Because both Maitland and herself are strict vegetarians, while Staten Moses is a flesh eater and a wine and liquor drinker.
Aha. Aha. So keep on reading.
Never will the spiritualists find reliable, trustworthy mediums and seers so long as the latter and their circle will saturate themselves with animal blood and the millions of infusoria of the fermented fluids. Infusoria.
Now, infusoria, I think he misused the term because infusoria is actually little tiny one-celled creatures that are very prevalent in kind of stagnant water. But I think what he meant was the fact that any kind of alcohol attracts entities on the astral plane. They, for whatever reason, love the effects of alcohol both on themselves and on the people who imbibe them. So, according to Theosophy, the atmosphere inside a bar, for example, is filled with astral entities who are relishing this atmosphere that surrounds this area.
That's very interesting. The process of fermentation, though, doesn't that create small organisms? Isn't fermentation itself
It
bacteria?
does, but then the alcohol kills them. So I'm not sure if he's referring to that. And it's yeast that is, it's not actually infusoria as it's used in science. But so I'm not 100% certain that's what he means, but I'm just trying to guess.
Since my return, I have found it impossible to breathe, even in the atmosphere of the headquarters. Moria had to interfere and force the whole household to give up meat, and they had, all of them, to be purified and thoroughly cleansed with various disinfecting drugs before I could even help myself to my letters.
And here he's talking about Bombay because the headquarters is still in Bombay for a few more months still. And there were several people, including HPB and Alcott, who were meat eaters.
But KH wasn't physically there, just in
No,
maybe
but
astral
he had
form.
to visit in order to conduct some business there, and he said he wasn't able to. Previously, he was able to. It wasn't an impediment. But now it is because of his samadhi.
Wow.
His vibrational rate had been raised to such an extent that he was far more sensitive than he was before.
And I am not, as you may imagine, half as sensitive to the loathsome emanations as a tolerably respectable disembodied shell would be, let alone a real presence. In a year or so, perchance earlier, I may find myself hardened again. At present, I find it impossible. Do what I may. And now, with this preface, instead of answering, I ask you a question. You know Stainton Moses, and you know Maitland and Mrs. Kingsford personally. And you have heard of and read about a good many seers in the past and present centuries, such as Swedenborg, Boehm, and others. Not one among the number, but thoroughly are honest, sincere, and intelligent, as well as educated. Each of them has or had an imperator of his own, a guardian, and a revelator, whose mission has been to spin out to his spiritual ward a new system embracing all the details of the world of spirit. Do you know of any two that agree? And since truth is one, why do we not find them agreeing even upon the most vital problems, of which there cannot be two solutions? Summed up, it comes to the following. All the Rosicrucians, all the medieval mystics, Swedenborg, Oxley, etc., say, there are secret brotherhoods of initiates in the East, especially in Tibet and Tartary. There only can the lost word be found. And there are spirits of the elements and spirit flames that were never incarnated in this cycle, and immortality is conditional.
All right, so now he's talked about the ones who do perceive some elements of truth, and they all recognize that these truths come from Asia. Tartary is a vast area in China, Mongolia, all of the northern eastern part of China today, but it's an ancient civilization, and there are many legends and myths of wise men coming from this area to share their secrets, their truths with the rest of humanity. And so these seers, he's saying, at least have a partial understanding, and they are willing to admit that this is where the truth comes from. Now he's going to contrast that with the other type of mediums.
Mediums and clairvoyants of the type of Stainton Moses say, there are no brothers in Tibet or India, and the lost word is in the sole keeping of my guardian, of his guardian,
Yeah,
right?
my spirit guide.
Right. The sole keeping of, the lost word is the sole keeping of his guardian, my gosh, who knows the word but knows of no brothers. And immortality is for all and unconditional, there being no spirits but the human and the disembodied, etc., etc. A system of radical denial of the first one and in complete antagonism with it. While Oxley and Mrs. Hollis Billing are in direct communication with the brothers, Stainton Moses rejects the very idea of one, while Bucyrus is an angel or the spirit of a group of spirits. Dion Chohan's Imperator is the soul of a disembodied solo sage. We haven't heard the word Bucyrus
Yeah,
before.
Bucyrus is the kind of spiritual entity that Oxley introduced into his explanation of the Bhagavad Gita and the other scriptures of Hinduism. And it flies in the face, of course, of truth, but at least he acknowledged that there were brothers, there were enlightened people in Asia, in India, and Stainton Moses and others don't. So he's going to compare Oxley's point of view with that of Stainton Moses.
So continuing talking about Imperator. His teachings are authoritative, yet we always find a ring of uncertainty and hesitation in them.
Yeah, he always says, well, we're not sure about this. So even though Imperator claims to be the sole representative of the truth, he seems very unsure of things quite often. And I cut them out, but he listed a whole bunch of examples that were in writing.
Why so hazy? because he, Imperator, knows, but he, Stainton Moses, knoweth not.
Now he's quoting Imperator.
For as his spirits, Imperator repeatedly reminded him, you do not appear to have gathered rightly what we said. Controversy stirs up your mind and feeling, and in place of a transparent medium, gives us one that is morally depraved. We require a passive mind and cannot act without it.
So Imperator is dissing the medium that supposedly is sharing his message with the world. He's saying that he's incompetent and morally depraved. And he says, we require a passive mind. All we're asking is that you just share what we tell you. Don't add your own spin on it.
As we do not require a passive mind, so now KH is talking about himself and the brother.
Yeah, and he's saying we not only do we not want a passive mind, go ahead.
But on the contrary, are seeking for those most active, which can put two and two together once they are on the right track. We will, if you don't mind, drop the subject. Let your mind work out the problem for itself. This is brilliant. They don't claim to want to control any student or any person. They want to give hints and tricks and clues for us to do it our own damn selves.
Yeah, exactly. No,
it's the opposite of wanting a passive mind to be
exactly
puppeteered, kind of.
Yeah, and that's why we say they're not looking for clerical workers and people who will write down something and share it with the world without having anything to say about it. No, that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for workers, people who grasp the idea and who take it upon themselves to write books and to come up with lesson plans, et cetera, et cetera.
Now, they do give dictation of writing sometimes like Alice Bailey books and The Secret Doctrine and Isis Unveiled were more or less given through them.
But even then, they share their own interpretation.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And if they need correction, they've got someone who can correct them. If you're on your own, then whatever you say, is possibly suspect.
Yes, I am indeed satisfied with your last article, and many a sentence of mystic meaning will shine yet before your soul's eye like a projector illuminating the darkness of your mind. Such is the course of gradual progress. A year or two back, you might have written a more brilliant, but never a more profound article. Don't neglect, then, my good brother, the humble, the derided journal of your society, and pay no heed either to its quaint, pretentious cover, nor the heaps of manure contained in it. To repeat the too familiar remark used often at Shimla.
By Hume.
Oh. But let your attention be rather drawn to the few pearls of wisdom and occult truths to be occasionally discovered under that manure. Subba Rao is right. He who knows anything of the ways of the Siddhas shall concur with the views expressed on the third page of his incomplete letter. Many of us would be mistaken for madmen by you English gentlemen. But he who would become a son of wisdom can always see beneath the rugged surface. So it is with the poor old journal. Behold its mystically pretentious clothing, its numerous blemishes and literary defects, as well as that cover. To those truly wise, those breaks of gray may suggest an allegory full of meaning, such as the streaks of twilight upon the eastern sky at morning's early dawn, after a night of intense darkness, the dawn of a more spiritually intellectual cycle. And who knows how many of those who, unfazed by its unattractive appearance, will keep on turning its pages, and who may find themselves rewarded someday for their perseverance. You yourself, some fine morning, while poring over its crooked columns with the sharpened wits of a well-rested brain, may perceive in them the unexpected solution of an old, blurred, forgotten dream of yours.
And now he's going back to something that Sinnett had written in his letter.
Then why feel unhappy and disappointed? Conditions may change for the better, for we too, spook-like, need our conditions and can hardly work without them. And then the vague depression of spirit which is now settling upon you like a heavy cloud on a landscape may be blown away at the first favorable breeze.
So again, the same thing that we've talked about don't worry about things that have not happened yet.
Yeah.
All you do is make it more difficult for yourself and the people around you. Worry never solved a problem.
Bhavani Shankar is with Alcott, and he is stronger and fitter in many a way more than Damodar or even our mutual female friend.
So Bhavani Shankar is another one of the chelas in training, and he's saying that he has some great potential. He has better potential in some ways than Damodar and even to some extent HPB.
We haven't heard of Bhavani Shankar yet.
No, this is the first time that has come up.
Wow. Is he
He's
mentioned?
actually Alcott and Bhavani Shankar are actually going to visit Senate, so that's
Okay.
why he's telling him this.
No, you will not be snatched away from your study before you have thoroughly mastered the alphabet, so as to learn to read by yourself, and it depends on you alone to nail forever the too attractive vision that seems to you now to be fading away.
There's a missing page of the letter that somehow never made it back into the box, apparently. He was writing on paper that was wide, and so he would write a page on the left-hand side and a page on the right, and a full page is completely missing. So now he takes up on a different subject here.
Okay, different subjects, and we're close to the end of this
Yes.
letter. That I am not a seraph yet is shown in the fact of my writing to you this endless letter.
So it would have been even longer if it hadn't been for the missing page.
And remember that it's been curated down significantly.
A lot.
When it is proved that you have not misunderstood my meaning, I may say more. Moria, to enable you, as he says, to confront your enemies, wanted me to acquaint you with the totality of the subtle bodies and their collective aggregate, as well as with the distributive aggregate or the sheaths.
All
So
right,
this is a new topic, and we're talking about koshas, I'd imagine.
Yes, and Moria wanted KH to introduce this subject because so far we've talked about cosmogenesis and anthropogenesis, and the two disagree with each other as to the best tactic, the best way to attack this exposition of occult teachings. So they each have their own ideas.
I believe it is premature. Before the world can be made to understand the differences between the Sutratma, thread soul, and Taijasa, the brilliant or the luminous, they have to be taught the nature of the grosser elements.
Now, if we were teaching this today, that would not be a problem, but only because of all the work that has taken place in the last 140 plus years. They were the very first ones. Prior to this, virtually no one in Europe knew anything about these teachings. So, yeah, they're struggling to come up with the best way to introduce them to the Western world.
And to our viewers, we're talking about the koshas, which refers to the physical body, the energetic body, our emotions,
Right.
our mind, the different layers of our being, all the way up to pure spirit. What I blame him for is that he allowed you to begin from the wrong end. The most difficult unless one has thoroughly mastered the preparatory ground. I have looked over your manuscript to him, and more than once have I detected on the white margin the shadow of your face with its earnest, inquiring gaze in the eyes. Your thought having projected your image on the spot you had on your mind, and which you longed to receive back filled, thirsting, as you say, for more notes and information. Well, if his laziness overcomes his good intentions much longer, I will have to do it myself, though my time is limited. Is he talking about Moria?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So
he's calling Moria lazy?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
heck?
Yeah. And this is very interesting. He said, I looked at the letter that you sent to my brother, and I can see your face imprinted on the margin where you're hoping that you will get some notes, explanatory notes from him to you. Very interesting.
Very, very interesting.
And he can see the gaze, the intense focus of his gaze on the page.
At all events, to write for you is no ungrateful task, as you make the best use of the little you may pick up here and there. Indeed, when you complain of being unable to comprehend the meaning of Eliphas Levi, it is only because you failed, like so many other readers, to find the key to their way of writing. You will find that it was never the intention of the occultists really to conceal what they had been writing from the earnest, determined students, but rather to lock up their information for safety's sake in a secure safe box, the key to which is intuition. The degree of diligence and zeal with which the hidden meaning is sought by the student is generally the test. How far he is entitled to the possession of the well-buried treasure.
So, isn't that interesting? It's not secret. It is, yes, it is buried within the text, within the information that is presented. But the seeker who puts forth the effort can unlock that secret by intuition.
And certainly, if you were able to make out that which was concealed under the red ink of Moria, you need despair of nothing. I believe it is time now to bid you farewell, hoping you'll find less trouble to read the blue pen than the red hieroglyphics. That's funny. Alcott will be with you shortly, and you ought to make the best of this opportunity, which may be the last for both. Whoa. And now, need I remind you that this letter is strictly private? Yours, whatever may come of it, K.H.
K.H. invariably wrote in blue pen or blue pencil, and Moria in red. I'm not sure why they chose specific colors, but it made it kind of helpful to make it obviously clear which one was writing. One was red and one was blue. We have a special treat this time. Remember the two articles that K.H. mentioned? Mm-hmm. Well, the first one we're going to cover entirely, but we're not going to cover 13 pages of it.
Okay.
Instead, I reduced it down to 2.5 pages.
Thank you for doing that.
Very, very concise. And it's very useful. Remember, he told Sinnett that he was going to have to do some work to figure out what parts of it were going to be useful to him. So I think we found those.
Good.
So go ahead and read the edited version of this very, very long article.
It's called The Elixir of Life.
And what is an elixir?
Magic potion.
Exactly. Yeah.
The author is, or rather was, for a few years a humble chela, and during his unfortunately too short stay with some adepts, he has verified some of the less spiritual parts of the course. And what is the course?
The course of training to become a chela.
So is the author speaking in third person? The author is, or rather was, for a few years? I mean,
yes.
He's talking about himself.
That was quite common in those days to talk about the author, even though you are the author.
Okay.
And his name, by the way, is Godolphin Mitford.
Oh, we didn't hear that in the letter about...
No, he didn't mention the name.
Wait, so the Theosophist magazine publishes letters from all kinds of people?
Yeah. Some anti-theosophy and some pro-theosophy. Some of them are people just interested.
Do we know who he is, though?
We don't. Well, we'll find out at the end a little bit more about him.
Okay. Still, he is permitted by his last guru to divulge for the good of those who are courageous enough to personally make the experiment the following particulars of the occult methods for prolonging life to a period far beyond the common. Godolphin Mitford.
So he was a chela at one point, but is no longer.
At the time of writing, though, was he?
I don't believe so. I don't believe he was. And yet, somehow, he was authorized to go ahead and write this article, and KH appears to have actually inspired him in large parts of it.
Well, you're right. It does say the author is, or rather was, for a few years a humble chela.
Right.
And during his unfortunately too short stay with some adept. Oh, wow.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. The actual prolongation of human life is possible for a time so long as to appear miraculous and incredible to those who regard our span of existence as necessarily limited to, at most, a couple of 100 years.
Now, remember that in Isis Unveiled, that was the figure 200, well, I think what she said was 12 score years was the maximum limit. But he's telling something a little bit different. But I think we'll be able to solve the mystery as we go along.
This is also a Siddhi, a superpower that
Yes,
we're talking about.
absolutely.
This is the exciting part, you guys.
Yes, it
You guys,
is.
you listening?
And so listen up here.
We may eliminate death, and instead of dying, change a sudden plunge into darkness into a transition to a brighter light, made so gradually that the passage from one state of existence to another is practically imperceptible.
So he's basing this partly on his personal experience and partly on the observations he made while he was apparently living among the adepts.
Wow.
He seems to have some real understanding of this. And he's talking about the prolongation of life, literally.
Wow. Okay. We must premise by reminding the reader of two theosophical doctrines, namely, A, that ultimately the cosmos is one, under infinite variations and manifestations, and B, that the so-called man is a compound being, composite, not only in the exoteric scientific sense of being a collection of living material units, but also in the esoteric sense of being a succession of 7 forms or parts of itself, interblended with each other.
So this is
The koshas.
exactly what, the koshas,
Exactly.
what KH had mentioned previously.
Yes. To our listeners, in different traditions, though, sometimes we're taught that there are 5. In some Vedantic or Hindu traditions, it's called the Pancha Kosha system, meaning 5 koshas, but in theosophy, we think it's more accurately broken down into 7, and we might get into the details of why that is, but not right now.
And by the way, Subba Rao was one of those who insisted that it was 5 rather than 7.
And look where he's from. He's a native Indian person. Not native. Yeah, native. That's
Right.
accurate to say.
Right, and he was an expert on Vedanta.
Sure. There you go. We might say that the more ethereal forms are just duplicates of the same grosser aspect, but each finer one lying within the interatomic spaces of the next grosser. Wow.
Yeah, isn't Yeah.
Let's read that.
I
one
love
more
the way that was expressed.
I've gleaned 2 ways of explaining things that I'm going to copy and use. One was, earlier in that one for sure. We might say that the more ethereal forms are just duplicates of the same grosser aspect, but each finer one lying within the interatomic spaces of the next grosser. We know that the interatomic spaces are kind of unknown. They're space. Inside of an atom, it's space, but it's not devoid of some kind of substance. That might be where these other dimensions are accessed.
Right?
My goodness.
Why not? It would make sense.
And he says this in an interesting way, though. We might say that the more ethereal forms are duplicates of the same grosser aspect, but it's actually backwards, I think. The grosser aspects are
Yes.
duplicates of the inner.
Right. But he's going from lower to higher.
Sure, because the lower is what we see with our eyes. We see this. Okay. If you are anxious to drink of the elixir of life and live 1,000 years or so, you must take our word for this and proceed on the assumption that it is possible. He's saying 1,000 years or so, huh?
Yeah. And we'll keep
Wow.
going. I think there's an explanation for that also.
Once we are determined to crack the outer shell known as the mortal coil or physical body and hatch out of it, clothed in our next finer one, we find that this next is not spiritual, but only a more ethereal form. one of the books that we teach from and read from is called The Etheric Double, and that refers to the pranamaya kosha, the second next more subtle layer of ourselves, the part of us that is, I guess, a copy, a duplicate of the physical, but made of energy.
And according to some clairvoyants or people who have access to that, they say that our physical body is actually molded on the blueprint of the etheric double.
Exactly. This is the
so
copy.
this is the double.
Yes.
This is the copy.
Yes, exactly. How are we to do it? Science says that about every 7 years we change skin as effectually as any serpent, so gradually that no one would have had the slightest suspicion of the fact. And that's kind of proven. Yeah, all cells regenerate every 7 years.
In 1882, science even then recognized that all of the cells of the body replace themselves over time. Mm-hmm. They were just beginning to realize that. They gave the term 7 years. We know today that it depends on the type of organ. For example, the skin cells are constantly being replaced. We shed, I think I read somewhere, 500 million skin cells per day.
Oh, my goodness.
500 million.
Wow.
So if you wonder why there's dust all over your house, even though it hasn't been windy, it's probably skin cells that
oh my gosh
fall off. And some of the longer ones, and the average is about 7 years, more or less. But for example, the muscles, skeletal muscles, replace themselves, the cells, about every 15 to 16 years.
Oh, goodness. We only die when our will ceases to be strong enough to make us live.
I did volunteer work, not in a hospice, but home care for hospice patients, and I have had many of the patients who died, and there's something to that. Some people really, really hold on, and as long as they're still holding on, they can usually stay alive. But at some point, the pain and the amount of suffering overcomes that, and they let go. They release, and you can almost tell within a few hours it happens.
Mm-hmm. To live must be the candidate's unswerving resolve. It may be said that this is the most concentrated form of selfishness, that it is utterly opposed to our theosophical professions of benevolence and regard for the good of humanity. But to do good, as in everything else, a man must have time and materials to work with, and this is a necessary means to the acquirement of powers by which infinitely more good can be done than without them.
So, motive. What is your motive for wanting to live longer? Is it selfish? It may look selfish, even if it's not, but only the candidate and his guru will know.
The aspirant to longevity must beware especially of impure and animal thoughts. A healthy mind and a healthy body is a good starting point. The physical man must be rendered more ethereal and sensitive, the mental man more penetrating and profound, the moral man more self-denying and philosophical. Wow,
so
that's pretty
each
poetic.
one of these koshas has to be purified, not just one or two.
That's really interesting. Let's hear that again. The physical man must be rendered more ethereal and sensitive. So your body we have to get enlightened. And that's the process of making ourselves lighter, brighter, with, healthier, glowing skin and good energy in your body.
And remember that we got to this point in our evolution by becoming denser and more material and grosser. We are at the very nadir. And guess what? Humanity as a whole will reverse that process. Mm-hmm. So all we're doing is speeding it up. Nothing more than that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Let's hear what he says about the three. The physical man must be rendered more ethereal and sensitive. The mental part of us must be more penetrating and profound. The moral nature of us must be more self-denying and philosophical. And it may be mentioned that all sense of restraint is useless.
Yeah, you can't force it. Trying to force it is going to ensure failure.
The desire to be good or pure must be spontaneous, a preference for something higher, not due to fear of the consequences or for love of praise.
Yeah.
So be good or else you're going to go to hell. Well, no,
Yeah.
you're just being good because you don't want to go to hell.
So if your motivation is that you fear the consequences, like religion tells us, if you aren't good, you're going to go to hell, you're going to suffer forever. Or love of praise, oh, you're so high and so spiritual.
That's
Yeah.
not going to get you there. The course, which is the training program that we undergo as chelas, the course is not based on vague ideas, but on a scientific system of discipline. It is a system by which each particle of the several sheaths composing the septenary individual receives an impulse and a habit of doing what is necessary for certain purposes of its own free will and with pleasure.
So, yeah, it has to be natural. And I can tell you, the one thing that will assure success is pure love of humanity. This unconditional love that KH has and most of the adepts have for humanity.
This is so amazing because it mirrors almost exactly what Patanjali teaches. And I like making references because in some ways the Yoga Sutras are easier to grasp than this in some ways. So the 8 limbs, to our readers, please study the 8-fold path of yoga. We're told in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras that you've got to find your tapas. We've said that multiple times, which is your daily practice. You have to develop willpower to do it regularly every day, whether it's meditation, whether it's karma yoga, serving humanity in some other way, and you have to do it with reverence or pleasure, like as if it's something that you just do, that's natural, it's part of your innate dharma that you're aware of. This is saying the same thing.
And there's a saying, goodness is its own reward.
Yeah.
It's for the pleasure of being in tune with nature. That's it. You don't have to have any other reward than just the fact that you are doing it in tune with how nature operates.
Each one must be practiced and perfected for it to be done with pleasure. It has to be practiced cheerfully, not with reluctance or pain. To proceed, one must begin to eliminate physical desires, not from any sentimental theory of right and wrong, but for the following good reason. According to science, his physical body is always renewing its particles. So too, while abstaining from the gratification of his desires, he will reach the point where those particles, which compose the sheath of desires, will have departed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's how purification happens. You get rid of the grosser part of each one of your vehicles. And it has to be a concerted effort. It doesn't, at this stage, doesn't just happen on its own. It will happen over time for all of humanity, but we're trying to speed up the process without breaking the system.
Wow. You know how we hear that a habit takes 40 days to form? Well, that may be true in some instances, but we're saying here that after 7 years of doing your practice, you won't have any more ability to vibrate that same way at all.
Exactly. And that's the key. There is nothing in you that
will
resonates or finds pleasure in that.
Wow. But it takes a while. I'm sure we can. I'm sure we could do it in less than 7 years. But I guess the physical body
if you
itself,
could do it in 7 years, that would be amazing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Many people have worked on it for 70 years and still haven't made it happen.
Very true. This is amazing. Wow. What desires are to be abandoned and in what order? If this isn't practical, I don't know what is.
Yeah, let's find out.
First, he must give up alcohol in all forms.
Now, this seems to be contrary to what you and I have said in the past, but just
wait.
Just wait.
Just wait. It induces one to violence of action, a rush, so to speak, of life, the stress of which can only be sustained by very dull and dense elements, therefore directly counteracting the object we have in view.
So notice people who drink heavily often, and they tend to be violent. It
Or at
brings
least
out
coarse.
the very worst in people. Some people, they just become lethargic and pass out. But there are others that want to fight somebody. They've been drinking and they're looking for a fight. And so this is what he's referring to.
Next comes meat eating, and for the very same reason to some degree. It increases the rapidity of life, the energy of action, the violence of passions. It may be good for a hero who has to fight and die, but not for a would-be sage. There never yet was a nation of conquering vegetarians. That's funny.
He does throw in one little joke here.
That's hilarious.
We'd probably say vegans today, but I thought that was very funny. There never yet was a nation of conquering vegans.
That's hilarious. Next in order come the sexual desires. For these, in addition to the great diversion of energy into other channels, in many different ways, as, for instance, the waste of energy in expectation, jealousy, etc., are direct attractions to a certain gross quality of the original matter of the universe, simply because the most pleasurable physical sensations are only possible at that stage of density.
All right. Now, here we can contrast pure, unconditional love and the common everyday term that we call love, which is contractual love. If it's a pure love, there's nothing at all. This is a soul quality. Unconditional love is a soul quality. There is nothing impure about it whatsoever. But on the other hand, and any other form of love, and it has varying degrees. It depends on the individual and the relationship. Some of them are very, very toxic. This love that we talk about, the roller coaster ride, the emotions that some of these relations go through, the fighting and the breaking up and the trying to control the other party and to get concessions out of them. It gets so nasty sometimes. Some of these are so base that you can understand this would completely prevent any type of spiritual development whatsoever.
Nor must it be imagined that austerities can help much to hasten the etherealizing process. It is no use to fast as long as you require food. The ceasing of desire for food without impairment of health is the sign which indicates that it should be taken in lesser quantities until the extreme limit compatible with life is reached. A stage will be attained where only water will be required. Wow. Nor is it of any use to abstain from immorality as long as you are craving for it in your heart. And the same with all other unsatisfied cravings.
And we've said this several times, that if it has such a hold on you that the intense effort to keep it away is such that it's not even worth it. It causes more harm than if you did whatever it is you're craving, eat that piece of chocolate cake or whatever. And it depends, too, on is there any harm to other people involved? If it's harmful to other people, absolutely not. That is not even to be considered. But if it's not harming anyone else, don't worry about it. Sometimes the stress is going to cause way more problems than you're giving into your craving for a short period of time.
The basest inclinations must go first, then the others. First,
Aha! Now he's now we're finding out. He kind of reversed the order. That's what I was saying.
Okay.
So now he's saying, okay, wait, these are the first ones to get rid of. When he said alcohol was first, it's like, no, I don't think so. Now he's giving you the real first list of what to get rid of, and then you can go back to the previous list.
Okay. First greed, then fear, then envy, worldly pride, selfishness, hatred. Last of all, ambition and curiosity must be abandoned successively.
So notice here
Right.
that he's
Ambition.
talking. Yeah,
Curiosity.
no, he's right. He is correct.
Curiosity.
He is correct. Bear me out. So look at the first one, greed,
Right.
pure selfishness. Then fear. That is a debilitating emotion. Envy, pride or ego, as we would say, selfishness, self-centeredness, hatred. All of these are ones that you absolutely have to eliminate in your life if you have any degree of them in existence. Last of all, ambition. Remember, yearning too desperately for something is going to prevent you from getting it.
So using it in a strange way, though, but
Yes.
we have to have drive to
You
do
have to have
something.
drive. You do have to have ambition, but unselfish ambition. So selfish ambition is also to be got rid of. And then the other one is curiosity. And the reason I think he mentions this is that many of the chelas in training are very curious, and they will venture to ask their gurus personal questions. For example, how old are you? And that's considered a topic that anything that they don't reveal, that they don't offer, you don't ask about. It's part of the training as a chela that you not be curious for your own information,
Right.
which
Egoic
serves, it
curiosity.
serves no real purpose.
Right. If you need to know information for a reason to do your work, then that's different.
So obviously, this is one of the very last of those that needs to be addressed. All of the others, once you have conquered these, then you can go back to the alcohol, the meat eating, and sexual activities.
Meditation must be practiced, the yearning of the inner man to go towards the infinite.
An interesting way to
Yeah.
Say
The
that.
adept may be more secure from ordinary dangers than the common mortal, but he is so by virtue of the superior knowledge, calmness, and equanimity which his lengthened existence and all that comes with it have enabled him to acquire, not by virtue of the preservative power itself.
Right. So you reach a point where the dangers of falling, failing, end. And it isn't because of the power that you have achieved, it's because of the purification that took place in the meantime.
Pure air, pure water, pure food, gentle exercise, regular hours, pleasant occupations, and surroundings are all, if not indispensable, at least helpful to his progress. It is to secure these and, along with them, silence and solitude that the gods, sages, occultists of all ages have retired as much as possible to the quiet of the country, the cool cave, the depths of the forest, the expanse of the desert, or the heights of the mountains. Nor must the beginner disdain the assistance of medicine and medical services. That's very good that he says that. He is still an ordinary mortal, and he requires the aid of other mortals. First, the neophyte will take more pleasure in things spiritual and pure. Gradually, gross and material occupations will become not only undesired, but literally repulsive to him.
All right,
Just like
so-
KH was saying, he couldn't go into the
Yes.
the
So
headquarters.
and that's the first indication that you're achieving results is when things that you were previously attracted to are not attractive at all. For example, you may have loved going to noisy, boisterous concerts when you were 25, 30 years old. And as you progressed in life and became a little wiser, that's not the least bit attractive to you anymore.
I'm a perfect example of that. My whole life was revolving around music for many, many years, and I would love going to concerts. And over the past decade, I've barely gone to any, and when I do, I only go for a little while and wait. when can I leave? And
Wait,
it's
you
very
didn't go to
different.
EDC this year?
Not this year, no.
Oh, okay, good. All right.
This is extremely practical for
Yeah.
all of us. You'll realize, and it doesn't just come with physical age. It comes with progression on the spiritual path.
There's a corollary here. Most of us, as we get older, we lose interest in some of the things that we found attractive.
Yes.
But in your next incarnation, more than likely you will have to repeat all of that, unless you have made a concerted effort. If it only became less attractive because you were not young enough to enjoy it anymore, that's not an incentive. The next time you're in a young, vibrant body, you're probably going to go out and do the same things again.
He will take more pleasure in the simple sensations of nature, the sort of feeling one can remember to have experienced as a child. He will feel more lighthearted, confident, happy. Let him be careful that the sensation of renewed youth does not mislead, or he will risk a fall into his older, baser life, and even lower.
Isn't that interesting? You kind of get a rejuvenation, and then the risk of falling increases.
Wow. Wonder why that would be. Maybe because you're more important, you're more impactful to the world around you at that point.
Well, because all of a sudden you're young again, in a sense.
Now the desire for food will begin to cease. Let it be left off gradually. No fasting is required. Take what you feel you require. The food craved for will be the most innocent and simple. Fruit and milk will usually be best.
Now, here is probably a good place to point out that there are various levels of adepts. There are, as we know, people like K.H. and Moria who still have physical bodies, who interact with students in the physical world, who travel sometimes long distances. And there are other adepts who are completely behind the scenes, never go out in public, never leave the ashram. Some of those may still have bodies, physical bodies. Some may have left off the physical body and have no need to get new physical bodies from time to time. So those are ones who have increased that even more. Think about this. As you get older, you have hopefully more wisdom because you remember all of the things you've been through. This isn't true for everyone, only the wise people who are paying attention. So at my age, I understand things far better than I did when I was 30 or 40 or even 50. It would be really nice if I could remember all of that. Here's an interesting fact. The Dalai Lama, when he reincarnates, he doesn't remember his previous life. He has to have teachers for years in order to retrain him and to teach him the doctrine again. These adepts don't have to do that. What does that tell you?
They don't forget.
They're more advanced than the Dalai Lama is. That only became a reality to me recently. These adepts don't have a break in consciousness. They don't have to go back and relearn all of the doctrine each time they change to a different body. That's a city.
That's amazing. Often, at the very beginning of the process, some real physical result occurs, unexpected by the neophyte. Some lingering disease, hitherto deemed hopeless, may take a favorable turn, or he may develop healing mesmeric powers, or some hitherto unknown sharpening of his senses may delight him. From the obvious description of the process, it will be inferred why it is that adepts are so seldom seen in ordinary life. For, along with the etherealization of their bodies and the development of their power, grows an increasing distaste and a contempt for the things of our ordinary mundane existence. Like the fugitive who successively casts away in his flight those articles which impede his progress.
Yeah, this is kind of a funny analogy.
So the aspirant eluding death abandons all on which the latter can take hold. Wow, if you don't have anything in you, around you, that death can hold on to, that is very eloquent.
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Everything got rid of is a help.
So what is it we have to do in Raja Yoga?
Let go.
Let go, let go, let go. And this is why. This is why we have to let go.
My goodness. Wow. By or about the time when the death limit of his race is passed, he is actually dead in the ordinary sense.
What is it that we say? It is in dying to this material world that we are born to eternal life. This is exactly what he's explaining.
And it sounds like he actually might mean, though, that the physical body does actually die, but we don't break consciousness if that's the case. But you can also die to materiality, meaning let it go.
Right.
It can mean both of those things, I think.
And as it's more purified, it lasts longer. So if you could make your physical body last 1,000 years.
Yeah. He has relieved himself of all, or nearly all, such material particles as would have resulted in the agony of dying. Wow. He has been dying gradually during the whole period of his initiation. He has spread over a number of years the normal process of dissolution, which lasts a brief moment or several hours.
For the one who hasn't made the effort.
Right. I like the way this guy writes. I wish we could hear more.
He had a
from
lot
him.
of help.
So you redacted. This is severely redacted.
The same way. I didn't change out too many words, but I spent hours and hours on this because it was so important.
To our listeners, we should post the whole thing somewhere.
We will.
Okay.
We'll post the original, and you can compare my edited version with the original.
Now, from time to time, you might have to add a word or two, but you generally don't add anything. You're just taking away fluff.
Right.
Okay.
I do switch some words.
Just to make it more comprehensible. Huh? Okay. The highest adept is, in fact, dead to and absolutely unconscious of the world. Interesting. He is oblivious of its pleasures, unaware of its miseries, as far as sentimentalism goes, though the sense of duty never leaves him blind to its existence. It's interesting, though. So the highest adepts are unaware of the miseries, but that's not really. I mean, they know.
They have removed themselves so far from the drama that we go
But they're
through.
aware that we have it, though.
Of course they are, and that's what he's saying. They remember. They remember because their memory is very, very good, and their duty is still to humanity and to the world. But they don't have this attraction. Remember, K.H. said he still has attraction to certain people and things. They don't. And by the time you become a Dhyan Chohan, you're completely removed from that.
Wow. New desires and enjoyments, new dangers and new hindrances arise with new sensations and new perceptions, and far away, down in the mist, our little earth left below by those who have virtually, quote, gone to join the gods.
Yes.
And what, it may be asked, is to reward this rejection of all the pleasures of life, this stretching towards an unknown goal, which seems ever more unattainable? The only answer that can be given is, 1, the power that results from the progress onwards, and 2, this is the only road by which a great help for mankind is possible, once the adept has safely crossed the turning point.
So The only two reasons to do it is to put yourself in alignment with nature and speed up the process, and two, to help others. That's it. That's your reward.
Not to mention lack of suffering, but that comes just by very nature of
Yes,
getting rid of ego and material things. Suffering disappears also.
Yes. Even if we can't put all of this into practice now, we can start. We can make a start. And we can realize what we will have to do in the future. And maybe the next time we find ourselves suffering because of some choice that we made, we may reflect on this and say, am I ready to make a little more of an effort and reduce that in the future for myself and for the people around me? And you never know at what point you're going to be ready to make that leap.
He makes it sound like it's certainly a choice to do this or not. Now, obviously, it is at this point a choice, but the choice to not do it is just delaying the choice to do it.
Exactly. No, that's exactly right.
Because this really is the path for everybody. He doesn't really make that clear. This is where everyone is going, every life form.
Right.
But now we can consciously choose to do it faster and reduce suffering quicker and be one of the leaders rather than just kind of bumble along and have more lives of suffering, because we're going to reincarnate regardless.
Right. And as we pointed out before, our stage of development, evolution of our wave of humanity is at a crucial point right now. There are so few teachers available in the world, and millions of people who could be brought along if they were inspired and given the tools to do it. So teachers are desperately needed in the world today. You could raise your hand and say, I'm willing to be one of them, but be aware, it's very dangerous. It is very time consuming. It requires everything you've got to make it happen.
That was good. Let's do more next time. That was amazing.
All right, next session, we're going to finish up this because there are some odds and ends that need to be addressed. So stay tuned next time for the rest of the story.
Thank you. Namaste.